Consider this. Every child acquires their native language naturally, without needing any dry grammar lessons. They don't have to memorize complex verb conjugation tables or painstakingly cram endless vocabulary lists. Yet by the age of 5, they can communicate fluently. Clearly, some profound, miraculous process unfolds during those early years. This is something most adult language courses completely overlook when they embark on the journey of mastering a new language. Adults often turn to thick textbooks, embarking on the task of cramming vocabulary. They diligently study complicated verb conjugation tables, then painstakingly work through dry grammar exercises. Yet after months, even years of this approach, they still can't hold a basic conversation. Why is that? Simply because they're trying to build a house by just memorizing the names of all the tools instead of actually getting down to building it. Our brains simply don't acquire language that way. Understanding this fundamental difference will completely change everything. Let's take a look at what typically happens when someone opens a language textbook. The first chapter will typically introduce a long list of common familiar phrases, such as hello, goodbye, my name is, or where is the bathroom? Learners will diligently take notes, repeat, and try to cram them into memory. Then they move on to chapter 2, which introduces even more brand new phrases and perhaps a few basic grammar rules. And so this pattern continues, memorizing, practicing, testing, then moving on. This approach views language as a collection of discrete facts that need to be stored in memory. But language is not a collection of anything like that. It's a living system, a way of thinking, a medium our brain uses to express reality. You can't truly understand a system just by rote memorization. Imagine this. You can't truly grasp the essence of how a car engine works just by memorizing the names of each component. A common mistake many people make is equating theoretical knowledge of a language with the actual ability to use it. These two things are completely different. You might memorize every Spanish grammar rule, but still be tongue-tied and speechless when someone asks a simple question at a coffee shop. That's because knowledge is stored in one distinct area of the brain, while the ability to use it resides in an entirely different region. So how does our brain truly acquire language? Consider a 5-year-old child. They have no idea what a verb is. They can't explain subject-verb agreement, yet they use language accurately, completely naturally, without even thinking. What the child does is an action that seems incredibly simple, yet is immensely powerful. They play with language. They listen to sounds. They try to reproduce those sounds, and they observe the results. They never ask, what's the rule? Instead, they ask themselves, what happens if I say it this way? They experiment, they fail, they adjust, they try again, and so gradually. Through thousands of these continuous small experiments, our brain gradually develops a deep intuition for how language works. This is the master key that unlocks every door. Intuition, not rote memorization. This is the optimal method, and it truly delivers results, because it perfectly aligns with how the human brain naturally acquires and processes language. Choose any text in the language you're currently learning, whether it's a children's book, a specialized article, or even a complex technical document. Want to unlock your learning potential? Dive deep into what truly sparks your curiosity. The power of this goes beyond anything you can imagine. Our brain is an incredible filtering machine. It focuses intensely on what captures its attention and largely ignores everything else. Don't make the common mistake most learners do. Don't rush to look up every unfamiliar word you encounter. Put dry grammar lessons aside. Instead, adopt this groundbreaking method. Read carefully and challenge yourself by guessing their meanings. This isn't a baseless guess, but a reasoned inference based on the clues you can gather. Perhaps you'll recognize a few familiar words, or the surrounding context will reveal valuable hints, or you'll discover hidden patterns and rules in how words connect with each other. Make full use of all those elements, and here's the crucial part. Verify whether your guess was accurate. You can look for a reliable translation or ask a native speaker for clarification. But here's the key point that makes it fascinating. The purpose of checking isn't for you to mechanically memorize the correct answer. In reality, you're evaluating whether your thinking process, your inference model, is effective, especially when you make a wrong guess. Your brain will immediately notice the discrepancy between what you expected and the reality. That gap itself is an invaluable treasure. That's the moment when real learning happens. Because our brain is inherently a prediction machine. It constantly strives to predict what's coming, the meaning of everything, and how rules operate. When your prediction isn't accurate, your brain automatically adjusts and updates its cognitive model. It self-corrects. It absorbs knowledge. But this process can only occur if you've actively made a prediction beforehand. If you simply look up the answer without making a guess, your brain will have no basis to update or adjust. The information will just pass through your mind and disappear instantly. This is why memorizing vocabulary lists often feels incredibly ineffective. You're giving your brain answers to questions it never asked. No prediction was activated. There's no discrepancy. No learning mechanism is triggered. Those words will only temporarily exist in your short-term memory. When a phrase is elusive and you have to rack your brain to grasp its deeper meaning, when you diligently ponder, constantly making assumptions and then testing them, you are unlocking the very innate thinking mechanism that a 5-year-old still uses. You are building your intuition. Let's explore this further. Each language contains a unique internal logic system, a distinct way of constructing and categorizing reality. For example, in English, we express, I am cold, whereas Spanish speakers say, tengo frío, which literally translates to, I have coldness. This is not merely a different way of expressing the same idea, but an entirely different way of thinking about the experience of feeling cold. You are possessing the cold, not being the cold. When you merely memorize that tengo frío means I am cold, you're only learning a translation and missing the deeper logic. You won't be able to develop an intuition for how Spanish speakers perceive states of being, compared to the concept of possession. Translation is like a bridge, but it's a bridge you need to cross and then leave behind. This is where the magic happens when you apply the prediction method. Instead, you encounter tengo frío in a specific context. You realize tengo is related to the verb to have, and you've seen frío before, perhaps in words related to frost or winter. You deduce, I have cold, so perhaps it means I feel cold. You check, and indeed you were right. Your brain lights up realizing, Spanish uses a possessive structure to express internal states, which English uses the verb to be for. Next time, when you encounter a similar structure, such as tengo hambre, I am hungry, you won't need to look it up anymore. Your brain automatically predicts, if cold is expressed with to have, then hunger probably follows the same rule. You check, and once again, you are right. This pattern is firmly reinforced. You no longer have to rely on memorizing dry individual translations. You're gradually developing a deep insight into how language operates in the mind. And this is the core difference between rote memorization of vocabulary and truly grasping a language. Vocabulary is just a collection of discrete items, whereas language is a complex system. You can't simply memorize systems. They require intuition, exploration, and intuitive understanding. However, there's an even deeper level, which will make the learning process exceptionally effective. After you've thoroughly absorbed some content and assessed your own level of understanding, take the following step. Rephrase that content yourself in the language you're learning. speaking aloud as if you're explaining it to someone. Don't just simply repeat what you've just read. Actively rephrase it using your own vocabulary. Even if your initial expression might be awkward, persistently try to present the same idea in a different way. Why is this method so effective? Simply because when you have to explain something, you are forced to truly understand it. When you only read or listen, your brain can become passive. It might just nod along, creating an illusion of understanding without any deep processing of information. However, once you are forced to rephrase a problem, you can no longer pretend. The gaps in your knowledge will immediately become apparent. Not only that, the act of speaking also activates different neural pathways compared to mere reading. You're not just recognizing patterns, you're actively creating them. The brain must actively construct sentence structures, choose appropriate words, and apply learned patterns. This process forms a true language operating system, far surpassing mere recognition. Try to imagine what happens the moment you are struggling to explain something in a new language. You want to convey a specific idea, but can't find the exact words. So you're forced to improvise, to find another way to express the same idea. With your existing vocabulary, you can absolutely master the language, as this is the secret that fluent speakers constantly employ. They don't know every single word. Instead, they've mastered the art of filling in the gaps. That's how they make the most of what they have to achieve their communication goals. Every time you struggle to express an idea and find a way to articulate it, you are continuously strengthening that incredible improvisational ability. You are training your mind that language is incredibly flexible, that there are countless paths to achieve any communication goal. This is completely contrary to traditional learning methods, which imply there's only one correct way to express everything. Another interesting aspect emerges when applying this method. You begin to build a relationship with ambiguity. Most language learning materials often try to eliminate ambiguity entirely. Everything is transparent, clearly defined, and thoroughly explained. But real-life language is full of ambiguity. Words often have multiple meanings. Context plays a crucial role, and subtle nuances always exist. When you infer meaning, you are directly engaging with ambiguity. You are gradually becoming comfortable with not knowing everything completely, with having only a general sense instead of a specific concept. This is precisely how native speakers perceive their own language. They don't have academic definitions in their heads. They have ambiguous intuitions, dependent on the specific context. A native Spanish speaker doesn't think that tengo frío means I am cold. They hear tengo frío and directly feel the sensation of cold. There's no need for a translation step. That directness, that direct connection between sound and meaning is what you are building when you train. With intuition instead of rote memorization. The speed at which this process is carried out is also crucial. 15 minutes seems too short to effectively acquire a language. Learning, though it seems straightforward, most of us are actually wasting those precious 15 minutes in a completely unproductive way. They simply skim a page, look up dozens of new words, and then quickly forget most of them, and the cycle repeats. It's a process that's both exhausting and pointless. Instead of constantly struggling like that, try focusing on one specific passage, just one. Dedicate the full 15 minutes to it, but transform those moments into a period of intense, deep focus. Read it carefully. Try to deduce the meaning of unfamiliar words and phrases. Check your understanding. Then read it again to uncover details you might have missed the first time. Afterwards, try to rephrase it in your own words. Challenge yourself to write a similar paragraph on a completely different topic, boldly experimenting with the sentence structures you've just discovered, rearranging them to see what doesn't quite fit and what truly works. Just 15 minutes of this kind of active engagement. This engaging interaction will build genuine language proficiency, far surpassing an hour of passively memorizing vocabulary. Why is that? simply because you're not merely cramming more information into your brain, but you're actively working to change how it operates. You're forging entirely new neural connections and groundbreaking ways of thinking. This process only occurs through continuous practice, through moments of struggle, and even through playful exploration, not merely by rote memorization. This is precisely why children acquire language much faster than adults, even though, theoretically, adults possess superior learning skills and greater discipline. Young children are always willing to utter imperfect things. They babble, they constantly make mistakes. They don't mind at all. In contrast, adults want everything to be perfect before they even utter a word. Consequently, they diligently memorize rules and phrases, hoping to achieve absolute accuracy before daring to attempt to produce language. Yet our brains learn through practice, not by endlessly preparing to do so. In fact, there's a deeper principle at play here, a rule whose value extends far beyond language acquisition. The brain is not merely a storage unit. Imagine a sophisticated mechanism specialized in identifying and creating patterns. This mechanism acquires knowledge by discovering deep-seated rules within experience, thereby building models to predict future events. And it constantly refines these models whenever predictions are no longer accurate, especially when you encounter something completely unexpected. When new information doesn't fit existing mental patterns, your brain faces a crucial choice. It can ignore that discrepancy or actively update its model. This is active engagement. It's the way you make predictions and then test them that forces the brain to constantly renew itself. Conversely, passively acquiring knowledge, such as simply listening to a lecture or reading a textbook, allows the brain to easily settle for existing patterns. This is also why figuring things out for yourself becomes incredibly essential. When you try to apply a pattern that you believe you've mastered, you'll immediately realize whether you truly understand it or not. Because if you can't apply it, you haven't truly grasped it yet. It's the act of trying to apply it that exposes gaps in your knowledge. And identifying those gaps is the solid foundation for us to fill them. So, in practice, how does this play out? Imagine you're sitting in front of a beginner French textbook. You've been diligently studying the language for a full month. Applying the method you've learned, you turn to a new page and encounter a sentence. The sentence is, "Le chat dort sur le canapé." You easily recognize le chat as the cat, and you've encountered dort before, knowing it relates to sleeping. Sur means on. Le canapé is a new word, but the surrounding context suggests it must be some piece of furniture. You deduce that the cat is sleeping on the sofa. You check, and indeed, your prediction is perfectly accurate. However, notice another interesting thing you've just inadvertently grasped: the use of elle est for masculine nouns as well. Now that you've seen this usage appear with both chat and canapé, that pattern is further solidified. The next sentence appears, "Il rêve de souris." You know, il means he or it, and rêve is explained as new day. Welcome to Saurus. You might not know it, but right now a cat is sound asleep right next to you. So what is that cat dreaming about? Take a guess. Of course, it's mischievous mice. You guessed right. And that's how you just naturally absorb the word rêve within a real-life context. It's closely linked to a vivid, meaningful image, not just a dry word on a vocabulary list. This is an exciting, highly active learning method, just like how children explore the world. And the wonderful thing is, adults can absolutely learn this way too, as long as they're willing to let go of the ingrained preconception that learning must be serious, adhere to rigid structures, and follow a dry system. The most revolutionary shift must come from within you. Stop trying to learn French, Spanish, or Japanese. Instead, immerse yourself in thinking in French, thinking in Spanish, thinking in Japanese. Even if you only have a mere 20 words, make the most of them to start the thinking process. When you see a dog on the street, immediately try to name it dog in the language you're learning. When you feel your stomach rumbling, tell yourself, I'm hungry, in that very language. Even if you need to look up that phrase first, This continuous interaction, even on a small scale, yields far superior results than any formal lesson because it integrates language into your actual thought process. Language is no longer a separate entity that you just pull out when needed. Instead, it is the solid foundation of thought. When you actively use language to think, even through the smallest actions, you are gradually building that foundation. Here's a hidden truth textbooks will never tell you. You don't need to possess a massive vocabulary. To truly start using a language effectively and meaningfully, it's crucial to know how to maximize the words you already have. A child with a mere 300 words can still convey a vast and rich world of ideas because they master the art of playing with words, knowing how to weave them together. The skillful application of context, gestures, and vocal nuances. Surprisingly, an adult with a vocabulary of up to 3,000 words often finds themselves at a loss for words, simply because they absorb them as isolated pieces of information rather than sharp tools for shaping thought. They might grasp the meaning of English vocabulary, but are completely clueless about how to apply them, how they intertwine, or the sentence structures they form. This groundbreaking method will thoroughly address that issue. Every bold prediction you make, every meticulous hypothesis you test, every explanation you construct yourself, you are truly internalizing how to use language flexibly, not merely memorizing meanings. You are gradually honing your practical skills, not just dry knowledge. And this is the magic that will gradually unfold over time. Language will begin to take on a completely different character. In the initial stage, every word and phrase feels like a linguistic maze that you must diligently decipher with your full consciousness. But then, gradually, many aspects begin to operate automatically. You suddenly recognize a familiar sentence structure you've encountered before, and you immediately understand without any translation process. When you yearn to express an idea, a valuable phrase will automatically surface in your mind in the target language itself without going through English. These magical and direct moments where language connects without hesitation to the very core of meaning without any translation bridge are precisely those small but incredibly valuable victories. Each such moment is a solid brick building true language proficiency. String enough of these bricks together and you will achieve perfect fluency. The true path is not about trying to cram 10,000 vocabulary words and countless dry grammar rules. But the right path is to fully leverage what you already possess, no matter how modest that knowledge may seem. To immerse yourself in language as a living ecosystem. Be brave in making predictions, then meticulously test them. Dare to speak up, even if you still hesitate a little, and explain everything to yourself. Feel free to explore and play with structures, keenly identify patterns, and flexibly adjust your mental model whenever it encounters an obstacle. Just 15 minutes of daily interaction will take you much further than hours of rote memorization, because you are building the core competency, not accumulating a dry repository of knowledge about a language, but rather honing the actual ability to use it proficiently, to think in it, so that the language blends naturally into how your brain operates. This is the brain's deep-seated instinct. It is built to conquer language. Every healthy human brain has an innate ability to absorb language, provided it is exposed to and interacts with it using appropriate and effective methods. The point is not that adult brains are incapable of acquiring language, but rather that adults often apply methods that are completely contrary to the brain's natural and effective learning mechanism. Stop resisting, start engaging in the game. Boldly guess, accept mistakes, then adjust. Keep trying, even if your speaking isn't perfect or your expression is awkward. You will gradually discover the underlying rules. Utilize context, build intuition. Language will come to you naturally, not through mechanical memorization, but because you have truly lived with it, even if only for 15 minutes at a time. That is the golden key, not some magic or miraculous technique, but a simple harmony with the brain's natural and effective learning mechanisms. Your brain is ready. It has been waiting for a very long time. Your task is simply to provide it with the essential elements: active interactions, continuous prediction and verification, along with enthusiastic exploration, and most importantly, allowing yourself to make mistakes on the journey to language proficiency.